Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight we are doing a special experiences show. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, words are hard, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And there are many ways to support the show. You can like and share it and with others, and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. You can also sign up for the Patreon feed and get usually one extra show per week, along with all previous Patreon content for as little as $1 a month. And you can also check out the merchandise store and get uh, shirts of all different kinds and a few other items with designs made by friends of the show. And support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. Also, please check out links to friends of the show, and of course, that would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who is here with me tonight, and her own channel, and also is the co host on the weekends on Saturdays, as well as Michael Strange and Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows as well as my own 24/7. So we I've been thinking about sort of taking a not a break, but giving ourselves more time to research the topic-based shows. And I thought a good way to do that would be to include one of these experiences shows every other week, um, where we I read the accounts of experiences, and then we have Jen with me here to comment on them. We've done this before. It was, I don't know, a year or two ago, a few years ago. I've been doing the show now for 5 years, so it's almost 5 years. So it's hard to remember when exactly this happened. But yeah, so I think it'll be good. And Jen, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me again.
Oh, James, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to hearing the stories and the accounts people have and, chiming in whenever it strikes me that there's something to it or just sharing my opinion best I can. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. I think that's the amazing thing about these is finding these random accounts of experiences and then seeing where the conversation goes. So let me get to the first one here, and I will start reading it, and we'll go from there. Scoot my chair over a little bit. There we go. I have a chair with wheels now, so that's kind of nice. I can move back and forth if I need to. Uh, anyway, this one says, I don't even know where to start, to be honest. This morning, I woke up at the exact same time as the day before, 9:47. I thought it was weird that it happened twice, but didn't think about it again. After that, I stretched and scrolled on social media for an hour, but I noticed I had seen every single one of the posts before, which got me thinking, what's going on? I went into my notes app to see what I had to do, and I saw the same exact stuff I did yesterday. And then I saw it. It was at the top of my page, and it said, Lunch with Grandma and Mom today. I quickly got up and just thought, I'm going insane. When I heard my mom talking downstairs to her mom, my grandma, I realized it was the exact same conversation they had yesterday. They're talking about what they thought would be good for lunch. They said the same exact restaurant at the same exact time. At this point, I thought I was going insane, but nope. The day went on and was the exact same day as the day before. We went to lunch at that restaurant they had talked about on the phone. Everyone there was the same. I even saw the same baby and people at the table across from us. Everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything, was the same. My afternoon, my evening, all the same as what I had thought to be the day before. Now I'm typing this after midnight, so I know it's not a time loop. I'm just so confused. Does anyone have a logical explanation for this? Could I have been in a loop? What's going on? Or am I just crazy? And that's where that one ends. That one is amazing.
Yeah.
Terrifying, but amazing. So go ahead, Jen. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think that they had some kind of experience where, that people talk about time travel all the time, and well, actually they don't. Time travel gets slipped under it gets swept under the rug. People don't talk about it a lot. I mean, it's had its time, it's had its moments, but more and more, I think we are accessing it all the time. I think that people have, well, there's deja vu, but this is something separate than that. I mean, just dreaming completely of the exact experience. I think that there might be something to the theory that, you know, uh, that time is always available, like the experiences through time are constantly available to us, that we are sort of surrounded by all of the different times in history, and it's all happening at once, and you can access through some means, cyclical means, any of those different time frames, whether in the future or in the past or congruent with you. You could access it hypothetically through some type of a mind state. In this instance, they accessed it through the dream state. And I think that, you know, we need to look more into how time is interacting with, spatial location and things like that. Because I think there could be something to that, and we just overlook it. Maybe that's what.
Yeah, I wonder, was it a dream or did they physically go through the whole same
Yeah.
the day before? And it still could be something that was accessed through sleep because so often people have weird experiences during or after they wake up from sleep when the mind is in a different state physically.
Yep.
So that could be either way. Either way, it's amazing that it was not just one or two or three things that was the same. It was the whole day to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So,
So
I think they do need to look into. I mean, they probably have. They likely have in the scientific realm and the psychical realm, in studies that are probably available to the public to some extent, but just pushing it all together and trying to form a grasp of what it would mean, and in congruence with situations like this, especially, and the power of the mind and the sleep state. There's not been enough out in the public about what it could all like, how that would tie together. And I think that, it does probably, but it's so infrequent or dulled down that not everybody experiences it. So when it happens, it's doubted, but nevertheless, the account should be given some amount of consideration, at least.
yeah, and there's so many other ones. I mean, they are rare, but there's still all kinds of them throughout time. So even Charles Fort talks about that in some of his books with people vanishing and reappearing, and and in different times or in places and completely around the world where there's no way they could have physically traveled to from one place to another in the amount of time that passed. So that's definitely something. Maybe we should do a show on time at some point.
Oh yeah, that was I've always been fascinated about that. The Philadelphia experiment was one of the first things that I ever thought, and one of the very first conspiracies I was ever introduced to a long time ago. And we should talk about time travel at some point. We never have. That's a good one to put on the docket.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, we'll do that. So let me find the next story here. The next true story. Uh, Let's scroll down a little bit. And so this one says, my grandmother passed away last summer, and we were all struggling very badly. The first big holiday was coming up without her, Thanksgiving. My mom and I had been talking about how hard that was going to be, celebrating uh, with all of us for the first time without her, and how would we do that? About a week before Thanksgiving, I had a dream that I was with her, walking behind her and feeling so happy to see her. I sometimes get into a lucid dreaming state where I am part awake and part asleep. I will dream, but be partially aware of it. As the dream was happening, it stopped, and instead I heard loudly my grandmother's voice in my head, talking to me. She told me to enjoy her favorite pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving, and then told me to keep meeting with Grandpa and having breakfast with him because he needs that, which was true. I had been doing that with him. I hold this experience so close to me and hope to have another one again in my life. So that's the end of that one. Funny, we were just talking about dreams and that being sort of a gateway to all kinds of experiences. And I love it when there's possibly a spirit that communicates and gives information that if they would not have known it in life. Um,
Mhm.
where it's the grandpa, the writer was going to lunch with their grandfather, and I don't know if if they did that before the grandmother died, but if they didn't, then that is amazing because somehow it seems like the grandmother knew about that.
Yeah, I think that, many of the old stories about encounters with the gods or with different the folklore and folk tales and things like that that they are talking about the dreamscape is the same world. I think that that's all the same world, very likely. I haven't seen anything that would say otherwise. It's a real place where people have encounters in the sleep state or in some other type of trance-like state with the deceased, but also with um, figment characters that possibly could just be very developed deceased individuals from the ancient world, or they just developed over time or something of the kind. We're sort of gods and monsters and the deceased in the realm of the dream state, the imagination that is a real place, and that's where they are located. And it's some kind of spatial reality, right? I mean, that's what it looks like. And I theorize, I mean, I with no, way to prove it, but everything does point in that direction, and it's worth considering, nevertheless,
Yeah,
whether it has
definitely.
or not, So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I've had a few experiences with my my own grandma coming back in dreams, and
Yeah.
it's amazing because I can say for sure I can tell the difference between just a regular random dream and a visitation dream or an out of body dream. They all feel different, um, and it's impossible to, again, as you were saying, it's impossible to prove that to anyone. I think unless you've had that experience, and can go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where, people don't they hear so much anymore. I mean, like, there's so much with going on with AI or with, creepy pastas
Hmm.
and or just, fictional writing, freelance of accounts and things like that, that people aren't sure if it's a true account anymore as they used to be. But these accounts and these stories have been going on forever, but they actually have had a lot of weight. There's been a lot of work done in lucid dreaming, and there's been a lot of work done with communication with the deceased in those dream states, and the knowledge and the information that they have is correct many times over again. So I think that's interesting to notice. There are accounts of psychics being correct. There are cases, criminal cases that where the police stations or different accounts like that have sent off different artifacts to be examined. I know of a few of those, not current, no, nothing current, but in history, in time, where they have. And there have been many accounts of, so basically, I think that the real world we live in has relied upon the cyclical world, and that there is some credit to be given to it. At least they take all tips from information like that. So I think it's really important to acknowledge it, and the dream state too of just sometimes they are spot on, and people do have certain gifts at times, and sometimes they're revealed specifically in the dream state. And the dream state being as real as it is, and I think that the world of the imagination too, obviously it produces our entire reality. Everything that we have, and this is old hat to say it, but everything that we have started out in the mind and then became reality because it was seen first. And even how to do it, many times people have described through channeling and other states like that, of writing songs or writing entire books or how to construct a bridge and things like that from dreams. I think Stephen King, I recall, like said that he got many of his stories from dreams he had, that were like, it's as if spirits were speaking to him through the dreams and telling their stories that way.
Yes, and even Lovecraft, I know he said that a lot of his writing, the ideas and the creatures in his stories were not nearly as terrifying as what he experienced in his dreams. So that makes sense. Let's
Absolutely.
get to the next one here. This one says, I'm typically not the one to believe in this stuff, but this spooked me a bit tonight. When I was pulling into the driveway at my apartment, I saw a black dog walking up the sidewalk to my door. My headlights reflected off of its fur, so it looked healthy, like it could be a domestic pet. When I walked up to the front porch, it wasn't anywhere to be found. My apartment is right on the street, so there weren't a lot of places it could have gone to be out of sight. When I got to the porch, I stood there and said, "Okay, I'm listening." I don't know, maybe I'm being paranoid, but I've heard seeing a black dog is either a sign of bad luck or it's a sign of a crossroads. What's relevant is last night I seriously started considering moving up to where my younger sister lives. If this means anything, I'm wondering if it's an indicator that I'm actually supposed to move or keep living in the city I'm in. And that's where that one ends. Um, there's so many accounts of people having experiences uh, at sort of important points or pivotal points in their lives, and then getting feelings from whatever they've seen, or just it startling them enough to where they figure things out and they do things, and it turns out to be the right thing. Um, and I've heard that as well about the black dog. It can be a good or a bad thing, either way. So, and there's so many accounts of people seeing these apparitions or whatever they are of black dogs.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I am actually very superstitious. I mean, as skeptical, as grounded in reality as I have to be, many times over, I still acknowledge those things. So I'm just kind of, I do believe in omens. I do believe that the natural world around us in every way whatsoever, not even just the natural world, but just coincidences and things like that line up. And there's an attempt from the unconscious world. It's an attempt through symbology to communicate with us things that we wouldn't know. So I do believe in that. A lot of people don't, and they're just, it's facts across the board. But I believe those to be facts across the board because if they have symbology that has significance to the individual, if they take notice of it, and it startles them out of their normal everyday to day activities, they should take note of it. And so I still am a strong believer in that, as I have been from childhood. I learned that from people around me, and I've always believed in that, and I still do, and I probably will never stop taking notice of anything unusual and believing it to be a sort of a sign to maybe not do this or that, but at least to take notice or take pause. And you know, it's helpful to pay attention to things like that. I mean, I know that it looks as if it's just superstitious, but I don't know how many times I've heard accounts where people got a gut reaction or a gut feeling and they didn't listen to it, and or they were led astray because they were confused by something unusual happening. And time again, it comes out that if they would have listened to that little hunch they had, or that little twinge of feeling that they had to begin with, they wouldn't find them in the predicaments. They wouldn't find themselves in the predicaments that they do find themselves in. So I do believe in noticing signs like that. Something even as simple as a dog in the wrong place or something you wouldn't expect to see that stands out to you. Anything like that, I believe, is some type of it's symbolic to the unconscious mind, subconscious mind.
Yeah, this has reminded me of a couple of experiences I had when I did my first. I was going to do my first ever book signing, which now I'm not. I don't care to do those as much as I used to because of my eyes changing and things and all the light sensitivity and all that. But for my first nonfiction book that I put out several years ago now, I decided to do a book signing at a place here in town where I live, and I had a couple of weird things happen with that. Um, and the first thing was I had flyers made. I put in an order for some flyers to be made that I could pass around and around town, and I made the order online. And this is I don't know. This is at least a good. I mean, had to be at least 8 years ago, 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I forget now. Time is really hard to. I'm terrible at remembering these things, but it was after. Funny enough, it was after my grandma had passed away, and so I placed this order, and I went to pick it up. I placed it on a Friday. Went to pick up the order on the next Monday, and I get there and I tell them my name and everything, and verify the order, and they say, "Okay, hang on one second. I'll go get it." They could not find the order, and it was like 100 copies of this flyer. Could not
Yeah.
find it anywhere in the place at all. And there's only 3 people that worked there from the time I ordered it to the time I went to pick it up. And so no one could figure out where it went. And they didn't even know, because they didn't look, that it was a paranormal event. And so as soon as they said they couldn't find it, I was cracking up because I just felt like this is a sign of something. And they made a new batch of flyers for me, didn't charge me extra and everything, and they were kind of freaked out. I was trying not to laugh too much, but it was kind of funny.
Like, it's
Um,
just like that. I
so
mean, even simple delays.
yeah,
If you kind of things like this is taking longer than it should, or
right.
there's a set, and it's very frustrating many times over again. But you kind of just like, well, this is something I'm taking notice of. It's really interesting about that, or how easy some things are, and
Mhm.
for good or for bad, how easy it is. So I think it's very fascinating just to sort of notice those little coincidences, and when they stand out to you. When they stand out, it's speaking to your subconscious mind in some way that there's something funny about this and worth noting. It's always important to take notice of that and listen to yourself, to some extent, and recognize it best you can.
Yeah, and I had one more thing happen with that signing before it happened, before the actual event. I had a couple of friends that work with me on this project, and they were having just life was really hectic for them, and we didn't get things set up in time the way I thought that we would. And so it came to be like a week before the signing was supposed to happen. and I didn't have any copies of the book yet. And I was I was kind of starting to panic, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And this one day, I had been thinking about this all day, and I fell asleep sitting in my chair, and I felt like I got a hug, and again, it was from my grandma. I could feel it was her, and I felt like whatever happens, it's going to be okay. And those books came in the mail like a week before they should have come, and I do not know how, other than maybe it was her, but something happened where I got them in time. So that whole signing was really weird, getting that all set up because of those two events. So
Yeah, so many
um,
times, if listening to that kind of information, how helpful it is. And just like the example you gave, how significant it can be. And no doubt about it.
yeah, yep. I always like to share those accounts when that kind of subject comes up. But moving on to the next one here. This is a little bit of a longer one. I always kind of get excited when I notice that I have a longer one here because that means that for whatever reason, when I saw it originally, uh, there was something really interesting about it. So here we go. And it's funny because I find these accounts sometimes days, sometimes weeks before I actually share them on the show. So I don't even know right now. Like I don't remember what this one is about. So here we go. This says this is my first time posting here, but I finally got the courage to come in uh, and come in here and ask. This was told to me by my dad, so some details may be iffy, or I may not have the full story. And I'm not sure if he remembers everything, because this was 33 years ago. So apologies. According to him and my mom, this started when I was born, like right after I was brought back home. As a congratulations gift, a coworker gave my dad a sealed jar of Hershey's Kisses, which he put in the highest shelf of his bookshelf, knowing he and my mom would just eat the entire thing in days. Yeah, that'd be me too. Uh, this is relevant. Like I said, this started shortly after they brought me back from the hospital. Every night, from somewhere in the room, they would hear a tiny bell ring. Never at a set hour, it was at random times throughout the night. At first, they thought it was just their imagination, but everyone in the house at one point heard it too. A tiny bell would ring at night, always in the room where I slept. So if I was in my parents' room, the bell would ring there. Same if my grandma had me for the night, or my aunt. At one point, while rearranging his shelves, my dad noticed the jar wasn't full anymore, like some chocolates were missing, but there were no wrappers anywhere. The seal was intact, and it was so high up that my mom and cousins would need a tool, stool, to get it. And being the OCD ridden man he is, he would have noticed someone, or if someone had moved the jar or anything on the shelf. Then we moved from the bottom of the house to the first floor, and the bell continued to ring every night. And my parents kept on noticing the volume of the chocolates go down. Neither of them remember when it stopped for sure, but at one point, a couple of months after my birth, it stopped. My mom says it stopped after I was 6 months old. My dad swears it stopped when a distant family member passed away, which is a story on its own. I've asked family and friends if anyone had ever experienced or heard anything like this, but no one has ever gone through something similar. Have any of you ever heard of anything like this? A tiny bell ringing in the night in a room where a newborn sleeps, and that's where that one ends. I thought that one was wild, and I wonder if there is some connection between the sound of the bell that I'm guessing they didn't have and the chocolates in that jar vanishing even though it was still sealed. So go ahead, Jen, if you have any
Well,
thoughts on that.
well, I mean, I think it reminds me a lot of like reincarnation stories and things like that. I've heard accounts like this with clocks. Just one account I heard, so not accounts, but of similar stories. But it makes me think about reincarnation and things like that. So I don't know. I think, you know, so he was saying it happened before he was born or around the time he had been born, or repeat that part for me,
After,
please.
just after,
Just
yeah, it was after he was brought back. The writer was brought back home, is when they got the chocolates and the bell started, and then
yeah.
the bell stopped once the chocolates were gone. Apparently.
I don't know. It's really mysterious. I would say that it's definitely paranormal. I mean, it's cyclical. So I would assume that, something about his birth and the timing of it. Many times over, I think that there's something about the window of birth that does affect the whole environment. The individual is coming from a realm of life, and it's a sort of a gateway, a portal of sorts, and I think many things take interest in that, and family members or deceased loved ones, but it's the same thing with when somebody passes. There's almost like when somebody is born, the gateway is they're so similar,
Hmm.
as one is coming and another is going in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there was some kind of, I don't know, if it was some kind of magical ritual thing that the friend did with the jar. Were they like aware of some kind of practice that was done to ensure like a healthy the birth and the development of a healthy child that involved the sound and this jar of like an offering kind of a thing? Is what I'm wondering. I don't know what it would be, but that's what it sounds like to me because it all started with this friend who gave the family this jar of these chocolates. Um, so I don't know. It's a really wild one there. I think.
Yeah, I think it's cozy though. It's not negative in any way. It's just
No, yeah.
interesting. The consuming of the disappearing, apportation, the way that things leave one location and go to another. They were describing that there are no wrappers left behind.
Hmm.
I think that's fascinating, but it seems like it must go somewhere. There are many accounts in like fairy lore of borrowing or taking something for a little while and then returning it. Really weird that this was a uniquely a type of food or something. So that's really interesting. I think it's a very sweet story. Um, I wonder what was going on there. I have no idea.
It would be it'd be amazing if someone eventually moved into the house outside of the family and found somewhere like in a closet or something just a pile of these chocolates.
Yeah, if they were just taking them yet unable to consume them or something of the kind, but that would be really neat.
Yeah. So I thought that was a neat one, and I was right. The longer one, if I pick a longer one, it's usually because there's something in it that is not just a sort of a standard ghost or alien or creature sighting, and that's why. So I always get excited when I see the longer ones on the list here. Let's see here. So let's get to the next one here. This one says, "My mom and I were at my house chatting in the dining room, which has the entrance to the patio next to it, and suddenly we saw a shadow enter, a sort of woman with a veil, and she slowly levitated past us toward the hallway that leads to the bedrooms. We froze, watching without saying anything, and uh, and after the shock, we looked at each other, unable to understand what we saw. We both saw the same thing. It was broad daylight, and we hadn't taken anything strange. I guess they mean alcohol or drugs or whatever. To this day, we don't understand what happened, but we are sure of one thing: it did happen. Sometimes we wonder if these events are ghosts or other dimensions intersecting. And that's where that one ends. And I do wonder about that too, with especially when it's just a one-off experience like that. Um, whether it's again, like they said, there some kind of other overlap between levels or dimensions of reality, or if it is a spirit just passing through. I always wondered about that in those cases where it's just this one event, and then
Right.
nothing else before, nothing after.
Yeah, those do stand out. I mean, a lot of people, they have ongoing experiences and they happen for, you know, their whole lifetime, or they happen for a
Hmm.
certain period of their lifetime when something was going on. But in these instances where there's nothing that seems to, just sort of nothing sort of predates it or seems to be what's something causing it to happen, but it does happen. It does seem like it's just almost like a glitch or something in the realm of,
Mm.
how they're interacting with people. But once again, it goes on to say that, like the deceased still interacting, or the unseen realm having influence over the realm of, you know, the ones who are awake, or however you want to say it, or asleep. I don't know, because there's a lot of theories about that the wake state is a sleep state as well, and that the sleep state is the reality of the actual existence. And that ties in a lot to this. I mean, there's the concept I was mentioning, we were talking about earlier, that the sleep state is the same place, the same location as the imagination, in the same location where the deceased might be, and the same location where the stories come to us of, you know, things in mythology and lore, that is a real world, and that this world to them is a sort of manifestation in a realm that has a different state of matter or something like that, where they are able to really interact at a different level, where there is some kind of physical aspect. But it looks like it's worlds blending together, nevertheless. So I think that moments like that, though, where it's very brief, it's just sort of a person experiencing it who usually wouldn't experience it, and thank goodness for that. That people more and more may experience those things, so if it's no harm done, so that they could maybe understand there's something more to life than what meets the eye, or that there's a lot more significance to this realm, that it's impacting the other, and that there's significance for all the reasons of why things are happening. Because anymore these days, people don't understand why these things are happening. Their normal day to day life seems it's insignificant. There's a great deal of relevance to it, and there's some purpose in it. You know,
Yeah, yeah. And that reminds me of my own weird experience here in this apartment where years ago, right after I first moved in, I wonder now too if when you first move into a place, if it takes a while for the person that moves into a place and then the unseen world, whatever it is around, adjust and there's maybe more activity at first when you move into a place, and then it kind of calms down because that's kind of what happened with me overall here. But I had this one night where I was sitting here, in a different corner of the apartment, but I was just playing solitaire on an older computer, and I started hearing this sounds of voices, just a man and a woman, older man and a woman talking, coming from the front of the apartment, and no footsteps and no visuals. I didn't see anything, but the sounds of just a pleasant conversation literally passed through the apartment from the front to the back, and then just moved on Like they were just taking a walk somewhere, and the direction they were heading happened to be toward a nursing home that's not too
Yeah.
far from where I live. And there was nothing scary about it, nothing negative. It almost seemed
No.
like they
Yeah.
weren't even aware of that I was there, that the apartment was here, based on the way they didn't say, "Oh, excuse me, sorry, we didn't mean to cut through." Um, they were just passing through to what to them may have just looked like empty space.
Yeah. No, and it's well, myself too. I have encountered where, well, different experiences where the individual entity, you know, I decided it was an entity because I did notice that it disappeared. But I wasn't alone in that instance. I was with another individual and we were at a cemetery, and it was late in the middle of the night, and we thought it was a security guard coming up, but there was this elderly man who was walking around the pathway that was there in the cemetery. This was a really big cemetery in an undisclosed location, and he was walking by and he was wearing a suit, and it was dark and probably early hours of the morning actually at that point. And he walked by and said, "Good evening,"
Mm.
watched, and we responded back, and then watched as he walked down the path, and it appeared that he just vanished into thin air, and it was it was a ghost story. It was a classic ghost story, but that's one case where they are interacting with this realm, and they do see. And so,
Mhm.
and there are many accounts of different cities and towns where people claim that half the inhabitants, the people you see on the street, are actually spirits. I've heard things like that. And other accounts too, no, it does seem as if they are just occupying that space or moving through it, and we are a witness to it, and they do not see or recognize that we are there, and vice versa. So how often are these things happening that people are not encountering, um, the unseen world, as you expect? Maybe time travel has something to do with this as well. I mean, because we don't know if they're necessarily deceased or if they're just from it, but they might go hand in hand. They could be a type of time travel as well as, still existing continuously. It's the old argument of like a haunted space. Is it haunted by the memory of these things? Is the actual location? And but what would be the difference? There would still be a type of intelligence, but it's almost like it's a cassette tape or something. The location is a memory of what happened there, and what happened there doesn't just go away because it's as if the environment is recording what happens around itself. So it's really fascinating.
Well, especially, I mean, cemetery. That's a lot of stone. I mean, everywhere.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so.
That was that was actually that story right there, just real quick.
Mhm.
Um, it was really fascinating just how clear in detail he looked and his demeanor and how he was acting. And I don't know, it appeared that he was not just walking casually, he was walking with a lot of purpose.
Right.
And he did just off into the distance, um, like it's as if he just walked out into just disappeared. I don't know how to describe it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just he just vanished. He kind of phased out. That was a long time ago, but it's a story that I still tell because to me it happened, and for them as well, the individual I was with, that it happened as well. 'Cause we both were just very confused and surprised to see him to begin with at that hour, and given his age and how he was dressed, it was unusual.
And the good evening part. Was it
Good evening.
evening for him
Yeah, because for
or
us
not?
it was like very late, early morning. You know?
Right.
So, and how casually he said it was really odd too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That is amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's something to that. Um, so let's get to the next one here. This one says, "I wasn't a lonely kid growing up, but I loved to play. I grew up in public housing. My building was a two-home duplex with the houses connected side by side. At night, I would often hear heavy footsteps, as if someone was running around through the wall in the neighbor's house. It would usually be accompanied by childish laughter of play. It always sounded so exciting. One day, I asked the neighbor if I could play with the kids next door. With extreme worry on her face, she said there weren't any kids there. And that's where that one ends. And that is fascinating to me. I have a similar, just a snippet of like a experience that my grandma told me about. Her
Oh yes, tell
sister,
it.
yeah, her sister, and this is one of those things where I wish I would have thought to record or write down the things that my grandma told me about. This haunted house, basically. I mean, this place was just active. That my grandma's sister lived in, and there was this one day where the neighbor kids came over and knocked on the door and asked my grandma's sister, "Can we play with the kids upstairs in the top floor?" And there were no kids in the top floor. These kids next door, the neighbors, were seeing kids through the window of the top floor of the house, but there were no kids, uh, physical anyway, in the house at the time. So that reminds me of that very well, and I just wonder how often does that happen.
I don't know. I think especially with children, it's really unique. I mean, like
Hmm.
when I was a child, I remember we lived in this. It was a funeral home, but it's called a parlor house. It's basically they don't. It's a bigger. The rooms are open and everything else. It wasn't a big house. It was just the rooms were open. This was in southeast Texas on the Louisiana border, deep South Texas on the Louisiana border. And it was a just they called it a funeral home, but at the time, I think, the way it was set out and everything, it might have been one of these parlor houses. It's where they host a funeral essentially. But I was
Hmm.
living there when I was a toddler, and my mother said that when I was just a little kid that I would often, they would hear me talking to someone, and they'd come and ask me who I was talking to, and I'd say that little boy over there. And this wasn't like an imaginary friend scenario. It would only happen at certain times, but apparently, I mean, I was too young to remember this. But she gave account of that. And then I remember I do have one memory though of there was this little boy, and in the yard there were stickers in this region. Stickers are like these prickly, grass
Mm,
seeds that stick
yeah.
in your feet. And anyway, and this little boy could run so fast that he could run across it and not get any stickers in his feet. And, I remember him talking to me and be like, if you run really quick, you can get over them without getting them in your feet. But I never remember seeing that boy any other time ever again. But I remember, and I never saw him after that. Like I don't remember playing with him on going forward, but I remember that account of a little boy. But I often wonder sometimes, like, was he actually there? Of course he was actually there, but it makes you kind of wonder. It stands out in your memory because it was just such a fact that it sticks out in my memory anyway is really interesting. I think children in particular, they do see something. They see a realm that because they're still on that cusp, they're not as
Hmm.
filtered. Absolutely. And then many other individuals, people like yourself even, that never completely put up a filter that blocks those things out.
Yeah. I there was no way I could. I had that first experience when I was like 13 or 14, and I was just like, this is not physically possible. There cannot be physically the head of an older woman above a
Right.
clothesline with a sheet hanging down without
And
feet
no
on
feet.
the floor
Yeah.
and nothing to
Yeah.
stand on, and of course the clothesline being up near the ceiling, so she would have had to be like 5.5, 6 feet tall, more. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
even know. There was no way that was a
it.
regular person.
Yeah, to trust what you
So
saw at that young
yeah,
age, because you saw it. So, I mean, you saw it as much as you saw everything else that was going on, so it comes naturally like that. I think that's just really interesting with children and in general with the psychical world that they're seeing it the same way. They're seeing it not as something extraordinary, it's something happening just as if anything else is happening, but the circumstances are so bizarre that it stands out. Like that circumstance right there you mentioned.
yeah, I should probably share that story with people that may be newer listeners to the show because it's always
You
stuck
should.
with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is when I was like around 13 or 14 years old. Excuse me. Um, I went to visit my cousin at his new house, his family's new house, their house that they had just bought, and he was a few years younger than me, but we were all close. And so it was a to me it seemed like a huge house, and so it was amazing. And my cousin, now at the time, also it's important for me to point out we were not into anything paranormal or supernatural or spooky or whatever. We were kids, so we were into like comic books and sci-fi and all those things. But so my cousin decided that we would sleep on this couch bed that was in the basement. That first time I went over there, and it was nice because it was a we were kids, so it was a good sized couch bed for both of us. And there were sheets hanging from these clotheslines the family had strung up close to the ceiling of this basement, which had all the rafters and the supports and everything for the ground floor above it. And the lights were all the kind with the string you have to pull. So we didn't have all the lights on in the basement. We just had the one by us over the bed and the one by the staircase going up to the ground floor because there was no bathroom in the basement. And we were just talking, and there was again there were sheets hanging from these clotheslines everywhere. This was a family of five, so it was my aunt and uncle and two daughters and one son. So they always had, I mean, laundry. That size of family is always happening, I'm sure. And we were just talking, and the basement was just still being unpacked and arranged and everything. And but there was clear paths, there was open paths to get everywhere. It's not a problem. And it was a cement floor, and but there was just stuff all over. And we were talking, and we happened to look into the back of the basement, which is behind the stairwell going up to the ground floor. And we looked back there eventually. Now there was this clothesline near the washer and dryer, and it was like the others. It had a sheet hanging from it. And but there was something above the sheet. There was this just the head of an older woman with hair, long curly hair, kind of done up, and glasses. And I feel like it was blue eyes, but I could be wrong on that. Now this was almost 30 years ago now, uh, and but she was glaring at us like, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And the amazing thing about this is I was able to see her in detail, um, even though I was born legally blind, and I am extremely nearsighted as far as my physical vision goes. But my cousin saw the same thing, and he had normal vision. And so we were sitting there looking at this figure, and we noticed there was nothing beneath the clothesline, no feet, nothing for anyone to stand on. And we had no idea what ghosts were or anything like that, anything paranormal was, but we both knew, excuse me, at the time that this wasn't normal. This wasn't physically possible. And of course, we were kids, so we didn't know what to do. We were afraid if we went upstairs and got the rest of the family and brought them down, if whatever this was, whoever this was gone, we'd be in some trouble for waking everyone up. And my aunt and uncle at the time, uh, they both had jobs at night, at certain nights of the week. So when they were home at night, anytime, you did not want to disturb them because they were always busy at night with other jobs and things, and so I don't know why we didn't just leave the basement and go up to my cousin's room. Maybe because we already had the bed set up and everything. I'm not sure. Um, but we just sat there and stared at this for a little while, and then we decided, okay, we don't want to look at that anymore. We're just going to ignore it, and it should be hopefully okay. And and so that's what we did. And so we started looking in the other direction toward the staircase leading up to the ground floor, and that's how we saw a black cat. Um, and it was laying on its stomach, just looking at us with these orange yellow eyes. And it was weird because I hadn't heard any sounds of anything moving across the floor in the basement. But I still figure, well, we were pretty distracted by this, whatever this was, this apparition. I didn't know that word at the time. So maybe I just didn't hear it because I was so distracted. And we thought it was a regular cat at first and thought, okay, did it get in the house during the move of everyone moving all their things in? Was there a spot where it had been hiding? We figured it might be a good idea to find out where it had been hiding. And it was also a cat. We both like cats, so we just wanted to go and check it out. And so we got out of the couch bed. Now we were both kids, so we had um, to sort of turn around and move, and we had ended up looking away from this cat while also trying not to look into the back of the basement where this woman was at. And by the time we got off the bed and turned to face where the cat was at, it was gone. And I was listening at that point for any sounds,
You
and I
know,
heard nothing. Go ahead.
with that story, it makes me think like if they were one and the same in a way. You know, you hear accounts like that in stories.
Hmm.
In stories, I mean, like I've heard a lot of accounts like that where
Yeah.
humans and animals being kind of linked together, or like you see a personification, and it's almost like a projection of kind, like the cat might have actually even been an actual physical thing, or maybe not, but then they were linked in some way. So it drives so much of classic folklore and folk tales for me. I think 'cause I collect folk tales and stories and things like that, and I love it so much. A classic account and fascinating story, and thank you again for sharing it.
Well, what's funny is it's not over quite yet, because of course we were freaked out. There was this cat that was there, and then it wasn't there. So again, I don't know why we didn't just run up the stairs, but we retreated back to the couch bed and just sat there. And of course, by the time we got back into the couch bed and looked back where the cat had been at, it was there again. And again, no sound. And so we just sat there in that bed and laid there, kind of half laid, half sat there, and looked at each other and did not look anywhere else in that basement for the rest of that night. And somehow, as you hear so often in experiences, we eventually fell asleep. And what's really odd is all the experiences that I ever had in that house. It was always there was always just myself and my cousin there, and but he never had any experiences in the house when he was there himself without me.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's
Yeah.
almost like that both of you were sharing in or partaking in the experience as a sort of unified front, but that there was something about your psyches combined that
Mhm.
assisted in the interaction. That is very fascinating. And once again, just with it's not just it is a lot so often with children, and there's no telling how many accounts like this happen. And children don't know the difference, but it is happening, sort of events, and they know that it's bizarre and something is strange is happening, but just keep it to themselves until they, to a time where they're still thinking about it and then share it. And then they find out that it's a collaborative experience, that there are other children or people who experience things in childhood. They're so identical, and you begin to see a similar that there must be something to that phenomenon. But really incredible. And it's so innocent about how children, they cover the head with the blankets or just having a flashlight or jumping 3 feet away from the bed or changing something like this or trying to make an effort to affect that they are experiencing these things. You hear very often with the young children that they find ways to cope with the paranormal in a way when they start to encounter it like that. I do believe that, you know, not to overly, but I don't see a reason not. And, to some extent, I think if I were to encounter a child that was having experience, it's very typical that the adult just dismisses it out of hand, but it's worth noting 100%. It's
Yeah,
adults experience
definitely.
it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And the sleep and the going falling asleep and the going under the blankets and all that. Adults do that too when things happen, and somehow it a lot of times it works. So, um, but yeah, I think that's a good place to end this show for tonight. For everyone that's listening live in the Discord, stay tuned. We have one more show I'll be recording here tonight, and we'll go from there. So, Jen, thank you for being here as always.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and I'll just hang out and wait for that show to start, and I look forward to visiting with you on it. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Yep, and thank you all for listening and supporting the show however you do. And I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.